making headlines on our broadcast tonight. President Park hopes to work together with the nation's three main political parties on key issues such as North Korea's nuclear ambitions and the South Korean people's livelihoods. A meeting between the president and the newly elected floor leaders of the three parties set for Friday, the 13th. North Korea wraps up its historic political congress with a mass parade. We try to make sense out of what was said, what may be running through the mind of its leader Kim Jong-un, what the secretive regime wanted to show the rest of the world, and South Korea's assessment of the latest event. And over in the Philippines, firebrand Mayor Rodrigo Duterte, set to clinch that country's presidency, pledges to be a dictator against evil and vows to step down in 6 months if he fails to fulfill his promise to stamp out corruption. NEWSCENTER begins right now. It is 9 in Washington, 2 in the afternoon in London, and 10 on a Tuesday evening here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang News Center. Absolutely no sincerity in trying to improve relations with South Korea. That's President Park's assessment of North Korea's Kim Jong-un regime following Pyongyang's latest announcement that it would expand its nuclear weapons policy. Now, President Park and the new floor leaders of the South Korea's three main political parties will meet this week to discuss cooperation in areas such as North Korea's nuclear ambitions and the South Korean people's livelihoods. Our Song Ji-sun reports from the nation's top office.
Putting the people first through dialogue and negotiation. That's how President Park Geun-hye vowed to approach her relationship with lawmakers in coordinating state affairs and national policy. The president will sit down with the recently elected floor leaders and chief policymakers of the country's three main parties on Friday afternoon, fulfilling a pledge to improve communication with the parliament.
앞으로 정부와 새로운 원내 지도부 간의 대화와 타협을 통해서 민의를 최우선으로 하는 정치가 이루어지기를 기대합니다. 이런 만남을 통해서 국민의 뜻을 하나로 모으는 소중한 기회가 마련되었으면 합니다.
At the meeting, the president and the politicians will discuss ways to enhance their cooperation and coordinate policy, and the possibility of meeting regularly once the parties have settled their leadership structures. Livelihood issues and reviving the economy are likely to top the agenda, along with North Korea's renewed nuclear threats. At a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Park also touched on North Korea's claim to be a nuclear state made by Kim Jong-un at the Workers' Party Congress that closed Monday, and she characterized the regime's actions as a sign that it's unwilling to improve inter-Korean relations.
남북관계 개선을 위한 진정성 있는 변화는 보여주지 못한 채 핵 보유국이라는 억지 주장과 함께 핵 능력 강화를 밝히는 등 국제사회의 경고를 무시하면서 도발 위협을 지속하고 있습니다.
In order to overcome challenges on the national security and economic front, President Park once again stressed that all involved parties should come together as one and stay clear of political strife that undermines the country's interests. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, down a bit south in Seoul's National Assembly, the country's leading political parties are scrambling to seize key assembly posts before the new assembly session begins at the end of this month. Our parliamentary correspondent Shim Young-gil paints us a clearer picture of the competition and negotiations taking place in Parliament.
The deputy floor leaders of Korea's three main political parties met for the first time on Tuesday and vowed to work together to iron out contentious issues before the new parliament assumes its duties at the end of the month. Afterward, the deputy floor leader of the minor opposition People's Party, Kim Kwon-young, gave a statement on behalf of his counterparts.
We agreed to meet as often as we can in order to resolve impending parliamentary issues through dialogue and compromise.
The leaders did not, however, discuss what is already becoming a major point of contention: which party should hold the speakership and who will chair the 18 parliamentary standing committees. The post of speaker usually goes to the largest party, which in this case is the main opposition Minju Party of Korea with 123 seats. But the largest party is usually also the ruling party, which is currently the Saenuri Party with 122 seats. The Minju Party is also demanding to chair the Legislation and Judiciary Committee, the most powerful of the 18 parliamentary committees, because it is the last to review bills before sending them for a full floor vote. The ruling Saenuri Party claims it should chair the committee, especially if Minju holds the speakership. The minor opposition People's Party, the first major third party in the assembly in 20 years, asserted its newfound influence and sided with Saenuri, saying Minju can't both hold the speakership and chair the Judiciary Committee. The People's Party also urged the two leading parties to set a schedule for incoming lawmakers.
The three parties must finalize all the key assembly panels within this month and start the 20th National Assembly in early June.
The People's Party's rise has reset the landscape of parliament, and it will be interesting to see how it uses its position as the potential swing vote in the next National Assembly. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
It's been more than 4 months since Seoul and Tokyo reached a landmark agreement on Japan's wartime sex slavery. While time is ticking for the few elderly women who are still alive, Seoul says there's visible progress in the implementation of that deal. As our Kwon Soo-ah reports, a newly established foundation will offer financial compensation to both the surviving Korean victims and those who've passed away.
One of the main points of the landmark deal reached on December 28th last year between South Korea and Japan on the so-called Comfort Women issue was to establish a foundation run by the South Korean government through which the Japanese government would compensate the victims of the Japanese military's wartime sexual slavery program. Now, more than 4 months later, Seoul's foreign ministry has laid out a time frame for that part of the deal.
If possible, we're aiming for the foundation to be established within the first half of this year. And for that, we're pushing to launch a preparatory committee within this month.
A ministry official told reporters Tuesday the ministry's Northeast Asia chief, an official from the Ministry of Gender, Equality and Family, and others recently visited individual victims across the country to explain the implementation of the deal. Among the 29 individuals, 5 of whom were consulted over the phone, 26 were said to have been positive about the creation of the foundation. But the number excludes the women who live at shelters for comfort women, who have generally been the most negative about the deal. According to the official, the 1 billion Japanese yen, or roughly $9.2 million provided as compensation will be reserved for the surviving victims and those who have died. The funds won't be used to construct a building for the foundation, and the administrative costs will be kept as low as possible. But the government will still have to meet with all 44 of the former comfort women who are still alive today to listen to their wishes, as that's what counts the most. Kwon Soo-ah, Arirang News.
North Korea marked the end of its once-in-a-generation Workers' Party Congress today with a massive civilian parade in its capital, Pyongyang. The North state-run television covered the ceremony live. It's something it had not done during the 4-day-long political gathering. So what did North Korea achieve through the Congress, and what should South Korea and the rest of the world make out of the apparent change in power structure in this secretive state? Our correspondent in charge of North Korean affairs is in the studio for an in-depth discussion. But first, our Lee Ji-won has more on the floats, marchers, and pom-poms that filled the North Korean capital today.
A red wave of flowers filled Kim Il-sung Square, and calls praising North Korean leader Kim Jong-un filled the air. North Korea celebrated the closing day of its 4-day Workers' Party Congress with a mass parade in the capital of Pyongyang on Tuesday morning. Some 100,000 Pyongyang residents came out for the event, chanting and waving flowers until Kim Jong-un appeared to a rush of applause. The young leader was flanked by Hwang Byung-seo, a standing member of the party's political bureau, and Park Bong-ju, cabinet premier. They were followed by some 60 other officials, including Party Secretary Choi Ryong-hae. Kim Yong-nam, president of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, gave a speech welcoming the crowd.
The Central Committee sends its warmest greetings to the people and soldiers who glorified the Congress as an auspicious event.
He also praised the young leaders, saying that by faithfully following their one and only leader Kim Jong-un, they will always be victorious and shine with glory. People continued chanting the leaders' names, saying Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, glory, and more. At the end of the parade, Kim Jong-un walked around the platform for about 5 minutes, waving at the people as they cheered. 이지원, Arirang News.
And live in the studio with me for a more thorough review of North Korea's first party Congress in 36 years is our very own Connie Kim. Now, Connie, the highlight or even the purpose of Kim Jong-un calling for this political gathering appears to have been for him to don a new title for himself and elect a new official leadership around him.
Right. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been elected as the chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea, replacing his previous title of First Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea. Now, just to give you a sense of the importance put on the party, North Korea's constitution states that it is the party that is ranked higher than the country. Now, Kim Jong-un's party chairman title aims to legitimize his sudden rise to power following his father's death in late 2011. And another noteworthy change was the reshuffling of Kim's aides. Now, taking a look at the pictures, Party Secretary Choi Ryong-hae and Cabinet Premier Park Bong-ju were newly added to the Standing Committee of the party's political bureau. Their addition will round out the core leadership group to 5 members, including leader Kim. And it's expected Park Bong-ju will work on the 5-year economic plan that Kim Jong-un laid out during the convention. And for Choi Ryong-hae, who disappeared for a few months last year, the move solidifies his comeback as Kim Jong-un's second most powerful man. And in addition, North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong becoming one of the members of the Central Committee's bureau signals that Pyongyang will continue its diplomatic aggression regarding its nuclear weapons program. Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong, who was also under the spotlight, has also joined the party's Central Committee, which indicates she will start to play a bigger role within the party. And experts say the leadership reshuffle shows the North Korean leader was aiming for a smooth power transition.
The reshuffling was a balance between the juniors and the seniors. Instead of a radical shift in generations, Kim selected people that can carry out practical roles and consolidate his power base.
Now, Connie, North Korea adopted a slew of measures and policy revisions during this rare convention. Basically, it's clear that Kim Jong-un tried to, 1, solidify its leadership through this rare Congress, and 2, really make it official and lay out the vision of building the economy and officially develop its nuclear weapons. Just exactly how North Korea could do that remains a question.
You're exactly right, Konya. Well, North Korea used this rare political convention to reaffirm its position as a nuclear weapons state. It also clearly outlined that it will continue to pursue its so-called Pyeongjin policy of twin economic and nuclear development. Now, this was adopted in its decision and reflected in policy revisions which wrapped up the Congress. And during work briefings, Kim hailed the great success of the state's nuclear and long-range missile tests early this year, clearly indicating that the North has no intention to denuclearize.
We achieved great success with our first hydrogen bomb test and the launch of the observation satellite Hwangmyongsong-4. They raised the dignity and might of North Korea to the highest level.
And North Korea watchers doubt the regime will abide by its international obligations anytime soon, considering it has not slowed down with its nuclear weapons program.
There is a possibility North Korea could use nuclear negotiations to bring about a loosening of the international sanctions on the regime. But the North is firm on its stance that it will not give up its nuclear program, so negotiations are unlikely.
Connie, North Korea used its rare political gathering to announce that it has no will to denuclearize. Of course, something Seoul and Washington have quickly wrote it off as being, nothing new and nothing acceptable.
Right, Seoul and neighboring country Japan quickly voiced their opposition to North Korea's nuclearization. Now, Seoul has maintained the view that North Korea must show efforts to denuclearize, and with Kim Jong-un continuing to boast its nuclear weapons development, Seoul slammed the North's announcement.
South Korea and the international community do not recognize North Korea as a nuclear weapons state, and we firmly adhere to the stance that North's Pyongyang policy cannot succeed.
Japan's Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida said the North was being contradictory by claiming to be a responsible weapons state while also calling for global denuclearization. However, Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a message to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un congratulating him on his new title as chairman of the party. So it seems North Korea's traditional ally China seems to be walking the fine line of punishing the North for its nuclear weapons development and trying to retain its traditional friendship. So whether the North will continue to hold on to its nuclear weapons development and seek further isolation or make reasonable decisions and seek a breakthrough will absolutely depend on the young North Korean leader's future decisions.
Right, and especially with the international sanctions really kicking off and kicking in effect on the ground in North Korea, it remains to be seen how Kim Jong-un will go about, carrying out what the Pyongyang policy that he has pronounced.
Exactly.
All right, Connie, thank you so much for coming in tonight.
No problem.
The Korean government is facing what could be a long-term battle with labor organizations over the adoption of a performance-based wage system. As concerns grow over the state of the domestic economy as well as the unemployment rate, Seoul's top financial regulator is stepping up to the plate to encourage public firms to embrace that change. Our Shin Se-min has more.
The push to implement a performance-based wage system continues. Korea's Financial Services Commission urged government-run financial firms to ratify the performance-based pay. During a meeting with the head of the organizations on Tuesday, FSC's chairman Kim Jong-un asked them to cooperate and lower wages to reasonable levels.
The government may have to come up with punitive measures for public firms that are hesitant to embrace the wage system, like harsher inspections on management efficiency.
The new pay system is a move set by the government to reduce rigidity in the labor market, which it's blamed for the jobless problem. According to the government, automatic annual pay raises have prevented many underperforming workers from leaving companies. It's also blamed for hindering the level of productivity. Data from Statistics Korea shows that long years of labor, despite the level of performances, leads to a drop in work output. Korea's ratio of wage to productivity of state-run financial firms stands at 1, compared to the OECD average of 1.7. Experts say although the new wage system should be adopted by all firms, it won't be an easy road ahead.
Unlike the current system, employees should be given specific duties rather than multiple tasks in order to better track performance. This type of streamlining will also motivate workers to be responsible, automatically boosting the level of productivity.
Despite such moves, this battle over performance-based pay will take some time to settle, with the country's two major labor umbrella unions vowing to stage a massive walkout in September if the government continues to push for implementation. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Drones. It's all about drones these days, from transporting blood packages to conflict areas to surveillance missions. The entire world is zooming in on what these unmanned flyers can do to make our lives easier. Now, many experts agree Korea's drone industry has what it takes to become a leader of the global pack. But if potential has a shelf life, we should worry because as there are tight local regulations that keeps the industry from reaching its full potential. Our Kim Ji-yeon looks into what the government is doing to remove that glass ceiling and provide greater support.
The potential of drones in the mainstream market are considered endless. All you need is a remote control, a drone device, and fast internet connectivity. So it may be a surprise to find that the drone market in Korea, one of the most wired and technologically advanced countries in the world, is facing massive challenges. It becomes a bigger conundrum considering the country ranks the 7th in the world in terms of level of drone-related technology, according to a study by Britain-based consulting firm Frost & Sullivan. The same study also shows, however, that Korea only stands as the 30th strongest country in the world in terms of drone sales. The Drone Industry Promotion Association attributes the discrepancy to tight regulations as the main factor that's hindering the country's potential drone growth.
No one wants to put up with administrative work required to test drones. On top of notifying related authorities a week beforehand, there's also additional regulations to consider, depending on the weight and electromagnetic wave frequency of your model.
In comparison, the global drone industry is flourishing, particularly in neighboring China, where there's virtually no red tape to deal with. China's drone industry is estimated to have pulled in $700 million last year alone, ranking 3rd in the world in terms of sales. The Drone Association says the global drone industry as a whole is expected to grow into a $12.5 billion industry by 2023 from the $5.3 billion estimated in 2014. In response, the industry ministry says it will work with the land ministry to come up with ways to alleviate level of regulations to raise Korea's drone industry to the top 3 following the U.S. and Israel.
The Korean government will set aside $37.3 million in 5 years starting in 2017 to build traffic management and surveillance system for the technological development and safe passage of drones so that they can take up the skies in the near future. Kim Jong, Arirang News.
Outraged families of the victims of Oxy's toxic cleaners and numerous civic groups have banded together to launch a massive week-long campaign boycotting all products made by the British firm. Their action has even gained the support of major retailers across Korea. Our Lee Min-young explains why their movement is gaining traction.
The UK-based Oxy-Reckitt Benckiser, the maker of one of disinfectants blamed for causing hundreds of deaths and illnesses in Korea, is facing massive backlash as Koreans are turning their backs on their products. It was not until Kim Dok-jong, a South Korean father who lost his son because of the toxic disinfectants, staged a protest in front of the company's London headquarters last Saturday, did the chief of Reckitt Benckiser make a formal apology to the victims and their families. According to Ministry of Environment, more than 200 people have suffered from oxy sterilizers, including 95 related deaths. It stands as one of the worst consumer product scandals to hit Korea, which is why so many have joined campaigns to boycott and block oxy products from the local market. And the movement is gaining huge momentum nationwide.
Families of the victims and roughly 50 civic groups will stage a week-long boycott of Oxy products. They're also encouraging citizens and businesses to join the movement to ensure their voices are heard.
I have been waiting for so long for people to stop buying products made by this shameless company.
We'll fight until the end, banding together with the victims of the humidifier sterilizers, and we will demand a sincere apology.
Civic groups have also vowed to carry on such campaigns until the victims and their families are properly compensated and Oxy is kicked out of the country for good.
I hope that this incident could be a wake-up call so that violating companies are held responsible and forced out of the country.
In cooperation with other local and international organizations, families of the victims say they plan to stage more protests and engage in online campaigning activities. Meanwhile, major convenience store chains GS25, CU, 7-Eleven, as well as supermarket chains including Lotte Mart and E-Mart are starting to scale back or pull all Oxy products from their shelves. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
The fewest number of Korean men smoke cigarettes in this country these days. For the first time since the government started collecting relevant data, the smoking rate in that group dropped to the 30% range. Now, it can be partly attributed to the rise in tobacco prices in recent years, but experts point out that the cost of a pack of cigarettes is still very below the OECD average. Hwang Ho-jun has this report.
It's been over a year since the Korean government stepped up its anti-smoking policies, and it seems as the effort was not in vain. The smoking rate for men in Korea ages 19 and older dropped to about 39% last year, a drop of about 4% from the year before. This is the first time that South Korea's smoking rate has fallen below 40% since the government started compiling related data in 1998. However, there are still obstacles ahead. Even with a price hike of 2,500 won, or $2.13 last year, a pack of cigarettes in Korea is still 4,500 won, or less than $4. That's about $13 less than in Australia, $3 less than the US, and about $1 less than Greece, which has the highest smoking rate in the world.
It's hard to say we're doing enough when the average price for a pack of cigarettes in the OECD is around 6,500 won, but we're at 4,500 won.
On top of that, e-cigarette use among adult men jumped 2.7% last year from the year before. The Korean government says more needs to be done to meet its goal of lowering the smoking rate for adult men to 29% by 2020, which is why on Tuesday it rolled out its so-called aggressive non-price policy to curb the use of both cigarettes and e-cigarettes without raising the price. The policy includes a campaign to place graphic images of the damage done by smoking on cigarette packets by December, a ban on tobacco ads within 50 meters of elementary, middle, and high schools, and an expansion of support for smoking cessation programs nationwide. The government is also seeking to hike taxes on e-cigarettes, pushing up the price. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which shocked the world several weeks ago by revealing what's been dubbed the Panama Papers, has now made the document available for the public. They have created a searchable database of offshore entities that are part of the Panama Papers investigation. Among the tens of thousands of entities, a number of South Korean firms as well. Oh Soo-young has the details.
More than 200,000 offshore entities included in the Panama Papers have been made public. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists released the database on Tuesday at 2 a.m. Korea time. Visitors can go to the website to see who is behind the different accounts tucked away in 21 offshore havens around the world. Among the tens of thousands entities listed, only 8 were found to be held by South Korean nationals. North Korea doesn't appear on the list of countries on the website. The online database does not include records of bank accounts and financial transactions, emails, passports, other correspondence, or phone numbers. The ICIJ said it was releasing the information in order to serve public interest. The data, however, is a tiny fraction of the roughly 11.5 million documents leaked to a German newspaper last year. The papers belong to a Panama-based law firm, Mossack Fonseca, one of the world's biggest players in the grey zone of shell companies, trusts, and other kinds of offshore financing. Some of the Panama Papers scandal's most shocking revelations include the involvement of high-profile figures around the world and a number of companies linked to suspected money laundering, arms and drug deals, and tax evasion. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Rodrigo Duterte declares victory in the Philippines presidential election after his challengers concede defeat. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio with more. Now, Bruce, no official vote tally yet, but analysts say that Duterte has an insurmountable lead in the election there. He's been often called the Donald Trump of the Philippines. His campaign was marked by threats and crude comments. How did he get this far?
Okay, political analysts see his rise as mainly backlash against the country's elite. So despite years of economic growth under current President Benigno Aquino, a quarter of Filipinos still live in poverty, and it appears they've sided with someone who they believe is anti-establishment to shore up inequality in the country.
So how does Duterte plan to address issues that led Filipinos to vote for him?
Well, that's a good question. He was really thin on policy throughout the campaign. He said little more than that he has a lot of plans. His main message was mainly that he's going to crack down really hard on crime and drugs. He actually offered an ultimatum if he won, saying he'd wipe out drug abuse within 6 months, and the public should, in his own words, kill him if he fails to accomplish that. Many residents on the streets of Manila are still wary of Duterte's bold promises.
Let's see, because we still don't know if he can handle it well, and he says a lot of things about improving the Philippines. He says that he has a lot of programs for our country, so let's just wait and see if he can deliver.
According to the country's election commission, about 81% of the 55 million registered voters showed up at the polls, marking a record high. U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is now having to clean up after remarks he made about the economy that fly in the face of the party and his own campaign pledges. According to CNN, Trump raised concerns when he referred to himself as the king of debt and said he would be open to renegotiating public debt by treating the interaction like a business deal. He later told CNN he never meant to suggest he would want the U.S. to default on its debt. And he also backtracked on taxes over the weekend.
For the wealthy, I think, frankly, it's going to go up. And you know what? It really should go up.
Trump said he sees his tax plans as a negotiating floor that may change in dealings with Congress.
Now, Bruce, shifting our focus to Germany, a German national stabbed and killed one person and wounded 3 others at a train station in Bavaria. And the police are investigating if this had anything to do with Islamic State.
Yeah, right now they're looking into witnesses' comments. So at least one witness told them that he heard the man shout Allahu Akbar, which means God is greatest in Arabic. Regardless of the motive, though, local and district officials were shocked that the attack happened in their quiet town of Grafing, which is fewer than 13,000 people.
What I mean with my statements is that whether it was a political or religious act or just a person who is completely crazy and let themselves get carried away, it can happen anywhere.
Bavaria's interior minister says the man had no known history of extremism but was in a poor mental state.
Right, so this is an investigation, ongoing investigation. Obviously, his motivation is unclear, but Germany does play a supporting role in the global fight against the Islamic State.
Yeah, it indeed does, and Germany has maintained a level of alert in fear of possible attacks like its neighbors have seen, Belgium and France, but no major Islamic attacks yet on the German state.
Right, and there are also concerns that some of the 1 million migrants who landed in the country last year have slipped off the police radar. So That's something of concern. All right, Bruce, thank you so much for that coverage today.
No problem.
A gloomy Tuesday throughout the nation's capital with gray skies and light rain off and on all afternoon. Hope better is in store for us tomorrow. Let's head straight over to our weather center. Lee Ji-hyun is standing by. Ji-hyun, do we normally get this much of rain around this time of the year?
Well, this month so far, it already rained 5 days in Seoul, whereas last May, we only had 7 rainy days in the entire month. So we are getting more precipitation than average, which is leading to good news, as the nation will not have to worry about drought and water shortage for the next 3 months.
Well, that is great to know, but I think we do need to see some sunshine now. So how is the forecast looking like?
Well, good news, a good amount of sunshine is in the forecast for tomorrow. It's going to get sunnier as the day goes on, and air quality will normal across the nation. So that fair amount of sunshine will boost up the highs to near mid-20s in much of the country. So unlike breezy and cool day we had today, it's going to be warm and bright tomorrow. So be sure to take an advantage of nice weather conditions tomorrow. On that note, let's move on to tomorrow. tomorrow's temperature readings. Daily low here in Seoul, Daegu, and Busan will all start out at 13 degrees Celsius. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will top out at 24 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju will see a high of 20 tomorrow afternoon. Now, pleasant weather will continue till Saturday on Buddha's birthday. Then we have afternoon rain in the forecast on Sunday, which is Teacher's Day here in Korea. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And we have this just coming in. President Barack Obama will become the first sitting American president to visit the site of the U.S. atomic bomb attack in Hiroshima, Japan. We'll have more details on that in our later broadcast. That is our show tonight. I'm Moon Gun-young. Hope you enjoy the broadcast. For our viewers in other parts of the world, have a good one. For those of you in Korea and across Asia, a good night from Seoul.